Hello, welcome. Buongiorno. My name is Rachel Jolly. I'm the environment editor at The Conversation. We're a global news analysis website. Do check us out if you haven't heard of us. We've got offices all around the world and a lot of environment coverage. So if you haven't heard of The Conversation before, please have a look at us. We're free to view and we've got great news analysis coverage every day coming from all over the world. We've got a great panel here today to talk about how to make the world insurable again. Let me just start by quoting from a few of the articles published by The Conversation recently to get us going. Insurance claims from extreme weather events are surging. We know this. To use just one example from the UK, the Association of British Insurers reported a record £585 million in home weather damage payouts in 2024. But already that's going up all the time. Policymakers in the UK, many of you may know, tried to avert an insurance crisis in 2016 by launching Flood Ray, which is a joint scheme between the government and insurers designed to keep insurance affordable for households in high-risk areas. It was meant as a temporary bridge, but it was due to close in 2039, but it's already under pressure. Flood Ray is already under mounting strain. Reinsurance costs are rising all the time, and I'm sure Martin is going to talk to us more about that. But as many as 3 million UK homes could effectively become worthless within 30 years. So this isn't just an environmental issue, it's a massive financial threat with huge implications for societies. So as you know, what's happening in the UK is just one example. This is a problem that we're facing all over the world as countries struggle to cope with what extreme weather brings, and how to insure homes and properties is a big part of that jigsaw. So I'm going to introduce some experts here. I'm going to talk to you today about the problems and hopefully some solutions. That's always helpful. So I'm going to hand over first to Martin Powell, who is Head of Sustainability from AXA, who's going to give us a general framework on why it's important to make the world insurable again. He's going to set out the problem and again, hopefully then we'll talk about some solutions as well. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, super. Slides work. So I just want to frame why insurance is becoming increasingly important. I know Piero will expand on the climate-related damages in numbers. I'm going to briefly touch on the concept of parametric insurance and why it's going to be critical. And I know Bruno will expand on that. Dario will probably give an asset manager's view. And Paulina, what it means for a city government. And this I'm very excited about because I also used to work, I was the deputy mayor of London in a former life, which is why I felt the desperate need since leaving office to dress down. So apologies for not looking quite as smart as my fellow panelists. The cost of climate change damage is 1.7 trillion to 3.1 trillion per year. But it's not about who pays. It's the wrong question. It's about how do we make this figure as low as possible. That, for me, is really what this panel will think about. But actually, that really is the question that we should be solving. I also just want to indulge you for a little bit. So just close your eyes and think about the city you live in, or a city you grew up in, or a city you love, and just think about what that's going to look like in 2050. So I just give you 10 seconds to try and imagine yourself in 2050 and think about what it will look like. You may think about flying cars and drones and robots and who knows what. And I have no idea either, but I do know that you'll share the same space with twice as many people. Twice as many people will be moving around this city and around the same number of vehicles. Energy, water, the air we breathe, the water we drink are going to be vastly different. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to show you what I believe the city will have to look like for it to remain livable. Very quickly, this is a Panamanian toad. It's going extinct for two reasons. The toxins that it takes through its skin that are in the environment are making it infertile, so it can't breed. And the toxins it just takes in through its mouth, through breathing, are shortening its life. So between those two things, it's simply disappearing. I'd also like to just show you my youngest daughter. She has a superpower. She's able to detect when the particulate matter 2.5 exceeds 13 micrograms per cubic meter. It's a very special superpower. And in order to deal with that superpower, of course, she takes some medicine. So she has asthma. It's triggered at 13 micrograms per cubic meter. If I ask any of you here to tell me what the level is here in Venice as of 1 hour ago, does anyone know the answer to that? It's 17 this morning, and her asthma attacks are triggered at 13. So Venice is not a great place for her to be. In London, does anyone know what it is as of 1 hour ago? About 5 micrograms. So she could do better in London today than she could do in Venice. And I'll let you use ChatGPT to figure out why that answer, because it's quite complicated. We're consuming as a society, so India, China, rising middle class. This is simply going to mean we're going to extract more materials, even with a positive future that we move towards. The extractive nature of what we're doing is going to be significant. And it's clear that the number of natural disasters is going up. This is a pure cost to society. So as I said, the question is, how do we reduce that cost? How do we think about differently protecting our environment and the people that live in it? 68 million people were displaced by conflict and violence at the end of 2023, but 7.7 million by disasters, and that number is planned to double every year for the next 5 years. So we're also seeing this enormous displacement of people. I just want to do very quickly, this is about how we extract minerals, metals, anything that we need to make wind turbines, offshore or onshore wind, and particular electric vehicles. They're consuming a lot of things that we need to dig out of the earth, and therefore we're going to see much more extractive activity, which isn't going to move that trend in an easier direction either, despite the outcomes of having offshore, onshore wind and electric vehicles. Shenzhen, China has 14,000 buses. You probably didn't know that. All are electric, every single one. New York has about half the number, about 6,000 buses, and 25 are electric. So congratulations to New York for having very poor buses. But you can see that, the world is going to extract a lot in order to make those buses electric. However, this is a good thing, but we need to think about sensitively how we do it. I won't go through these stats, but just very clear that from a climate perspective, up 15% of global GDP could be lost by 2050. The number of workers that are going to be affected is over 2/3 of the population. And of course, ecosystem services, at least 10% of that 125 trillion figure is already vastly at risk. So that's $10 trillion that we should look to find business cases to protect. Lots of global concerns. I'm not going to go through those either, but AI is going to completely disrupt the way we think about how our societies function and live, but they can also be very positive in how we maybe solve and reduce some of these costs. This one, I'm really not going to go through. However, what I do want to say is, as insurers, and there's more insurers here than Francesco has ever had actually before, which so congratulations. I'm sorry, but congratulations. It's a good thing. But we're quite good at thinking about the future. We're certainly good at putting a value to it as well. And therefore, we should be better probably as an industry at showing that future. What we do here, we segment possible futures. Any of these are possible depending on economic volatility and also the effects of climate change Are they going to be worse, more extreme, or less extreme than we think? And therefore, we put these futures in place. This circle is potentially where we are now. This circle is where we could be in 5 years. It could go to the left, who knows? But by doing that, this also gives us a very good way as an insurer to think about how we need to adjust society through the products and services that we have. And as impact investors, it's very clear where this trend is going. We're putting more into things like vertical farming, waste to energy, local food production. We've been doing that for 20 years, but that is definitely scaling up. Renewable energies, of course, energy efficiency technology is clearly coming back, high costs of energy. We need to think about using our resources more efficiently. And it's very clear that we're heading to these big geoengineering solutions. And those are because we are not mitigating against climate change fast enough. So as insurers, we need to think about helping to underwrite and de-risk technology of the future. This is quite a grim state of affairs because you can see that we are planning on a sort of a failed future and putting our money into things that will solve it. So that's why I state this more as the 5 stages of grief. So I will leave the horrible figures up here that we're going economically to decline. Our ecosystem services are at risk. A 4-degree world would be uninsurable. Some people say we'll never get there, but I can tell you we will get to 2 degrees, and that is unaffordable for most people. So the costs will go up. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. I won't go into the parametric insurance because what I can say is the beauty of these solutions is fast payouts for environmental or social disasters. The fast payout means that you limit the costs, and I know that Bruno's going to go into that a little bit more. I told you I'd show you what the future has to look like. This is Fleet Street in London, and I can tell you for London to remain livable on the trajectory we're in, it's going to have to look more like that, which isn't bad, actually. That's how we can keep hot temperatures down. It's how we can keep our air breathable, how our cities livable, how we can move people around in the way we want to be. So that's the future we should really go for. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, Martin, for this intro. Very interesting. And let me say, I mean, if I think about the work we are doing for insurers, and I've been working there for 20 years, climate change, the effects of climate change, natural catastrophes are the biggest headache on CEO's agenda that I can tell. And for 2 main reasons. They are imminent, they are volatile, you don't know where they come, they can change your P&L in the year. So actually, after 20 years, I'm also meteoropathic. When it starts raining, I feel very afraid for what can happen. And to try to answer this question, which I think is probably the most important question in the insurance industry, I try to go through 4 main topics. The first one is, yes, nat cats are increasing, but what is the actual impact and the actual growth of nat cats? We look at the primary and secondary perils and the last 25 years, and we say, okay, there is, yes, a surge, and this surge is on average 4%. What is also interesting to see is that this surge is primarily driven by secondary perils. So those like wildfires, floods, hails, less so for peak perils like hurricanes, typhoons, which are obviously stronger in impact and they are more severe, but they are growing with a slower pace. I think this is the first important topic. When we then decompose into, is it a topic of frequency or severity, we see that actually both are hitting hard. But again, on peak perils on a slower amount. And when we look at the proportion, is like 30% on peak perils, 70% of secondary perils when we say where the growth is coming from. And secondary perils probably are also something that can also be more taken into, let's say, control with the right measures. This is the first topic. So actually, yes, Nat Cat is increasing and it's a 5% per year for secondary perils, 4% on average. Then second question, yes, we are talking about the word, is it insurable or not? But first of all, is it well protected? Is it well insured in the first place? And again, we look at the economic losses for Nat Cat, and we look at what is already being insured. And we look at that again for the last 25 years. The line in light blue is the protection gap. So it's not the protection, it's the protection gap. And it was 78% in 2000, and it's still around 60% in 2024. So still very high protection gap. Most of it is unprotected. Let's look at the trend and let's look at the different regions. So, and for simplicity, we take the United States, which is the best protected market, and the rest of the world, and obviously the entire world. So overall, there is an improvement. It's not a great improvement. We took the first 15 years of the century, then the last 10 years, and we say, okay, there is an 8 percentage points improvement on average, which is also true for the United States. The rest of the world, only 4 percentage points. So overall, yes, there is some improvement, not so good, to be honest. Let's look at Europe. This is where we live. The map here is pretty variable by country, and not surprisingly so. So on this heat map, we can see that the northern part of Europe, the western part of Europe, has a better level of protection, like the US. The eastern part is the worst, and the southern part is somehow in between. As we read in the newspapers, as Italians, I mean, some of us are Italians, we see that this is a big issue. And in fact, for example, the current government put a law to institutionalize Nat Cat insurance for businesses. And what you see on this map, you have these blue bubbles. The blue bubbles mean that in those markets, there are such schemes that are actually the basic requirement in order to make sure that there is another adequate level of insurance. So again, are we well insured? Not really. The best insured market is the US. Again, let me remind you, around 50%. So it means that 50% is not protected. But to then enter into the real question, which is the world becoming uninsurable? Let's indeed look at the US. It's the best protected market, so let's look at that. And let's look at how the trend is going. And we look first of all at two KPIs. So the first one is the price of property risk increasing? And the second is, are non-renewal rates for homeowners insurance increasing? So on the price of homeowners insurance, there, I mean, we take this proxy for the last years, and we say, yes, it's increasing. It's increasing at 6% net of inflation. The initial data were also net of inflation, so it was a 4 or 5%, so it's comparable. What we actually hear in the market, and it'd be great to hear Bruno on this, it's reinsurance pricing are raising more, so probably the actual price being transferred to the population is a bit lagging behind versus the reinsurance prices that are a best indicator of the actual risk underlying. But it's not crazy. 6% is something that is around what we saw in terms of the increase of the losses. Non-renewal rates actually are increasing slightly. So we say, okay, 0.8% in 2018, 1.1% in 2023. It means out of 1,000 insured homes, in 2018, you had 8 that were non-insurable, and so not renewed. And in 2023, 11. So just 3 more homes. So it doesn't look like a crazy indicator. However, we need to be a bit more granular. So when we take a map and we look in the different states, and then we can go deeper to counties, to zip codes, the more you dig, the more you find uninsurable places. And also the increase of non-renewal rates, as you can see on the map, is in many cases very high. And you have Florida for hurricanes, you have Louisiana again for hurricanes, you have Oklahoma for convective storms, you have Hawaii for wildfires. So you have actually many states, and These are data related to 2023. If we had the 2024 data, for sure, California would be on the map on red. So you have more and more states where you have a concentration of people, back to Martin's point, and where you have actually an increasing exposure to natural catastrophes that is leading to less insurability. And I don't want to enter into all the data here, but when we look at the last point, which is the leverage on the non-insurance market, the residual insurance market, we see that it's increasing a lot. So it means that many homeowners are left out of the market, and they need to rely on these schemes in order to be protected. So also positive spin. So what can be done? What are mitigating factors? What can we look at in the future? Little nudge, a worker with a roof. I mean, this also starts from us. The first topic is prevention. As insurance is becoming less and less mutualistic for right reasons, I mean, new technologies are there, and it's good to have a deep risk assessment. We can debate about exclusions, but at least you say there is a deep assessment into the causes and an analysis of what are the determinants of the risk. In this data-rich environment, prevention is the first thing. Prevention acts on different levels, from the government down to the single homeowner, to make sure that the actual asset is insurable. And this is part of the story. This is, again, an example from the US, where artificial intelligence, real-time information, access to satellite images are used in order to assess the single asset. In Europe, we are a bit less advanced, I would say, but still, I think this is the direction that it would go. And the second element that I would like to push here is actually alternative source of capital. So like cat bonds, for example. And here we look at the reinsurance deployed capital over years, over the last 10 years. We see that the top part of it is insurance-linked securities and cat bonds. It's a relatively minor part of the total reinsurance capital. It was 17% in 2015. It's actually now 15%. So the relative penetration decreased. In absolute terms, it increased, but the relative penetration decreased. And when we look at the proportion by region, we see 71% is in the US, only 4% is Europe, and only 4% is Asia, vis-a-vis economies that are clearly not in that proportion. So this means that, again, lack of data out of the US, lack of a developed capital markets able to transfer peak risks to capital markets is what is preventing some areas also to be better protected. Thank you very much. Hope it was interesting and very excited to discuss it.
Thanks very much to Piero Gancia from McKinsey. Now I want to bring in the rest of the panel. So we've got Paulina Velasco, who's soon to be Chief of Staff for the City Council of Los Angeles, Bruno Berlon from Swiss Re, and Dario Mangili from Impact, an asset management company. So can we jump over to Paulina first? Tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, what's been going on in LA and the insurance challenges there.
Sure. I'll just speak like this. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. In terms of Los Angeles, I'm going to talk about Los Angeles County in general, because the two fires that were largely affected, one happened in the city of Los Angeles in Palisades, and the other one happened in this city called Eaton Canyon. So in these two areas, I mean, during January, that week was the week with the most gusty winds in the history of Los Angeles County in the last like 20, 30 years. And so people were just not prepared. And with that, the reasons for the fires, as we know now, one was arson in the Palisades, and in Altadena's Pasadena area, it was because of a spark that happened on an electrical pole. And one of the things that we have to think about, not just in terms of the statistics, which are critical for this, is how do we collaborate as cities, as counties, or as states with insurance so we can provide a more cohesive response? Because now, as we're maybe 10 months out from the fires, 70% of insurance claims have still not been responded. There has been some great insurance companies that within 2 weeks paid out right away, but the number one insurer for these homes hasn't. And so it's an issue of having that real communication and collaboration with our insurance partners so that we can make sure that people have the resources. Because one of the most heartbreaking statistic is that after the fires happened and everything said and done, they said it's going to take 30 years to rebuild. And it's because, not just because of the funding, but because we have to do the wiring, pipes, everything has to be rebuilt from nothing. And this is infrastructure from the 30s. So a lot of things have not been retrofitted. And so how do we collaborate with our partners so that we can rebuild again?
Those are good questions for the insurance experts
Yes.
in the room. Bruno, can I bring you in now?
Good afternoon, everyone. First, thanks for having me, the organizer. It's a beautiful location. It's an experience to get here already for everyone, but it's great to be here. I heard a lot of the critical pieces already, which are in our daily work a critical element, right? And I mean, hearing to rebuild, there I always say, let's just also be mindful, right? If we plan cities, let's plan them where they make sense. Because often we build where it's beautiful, but it's just very exposed, right? And I understand that there are pain points and take them very seriously. I have them privately as well with insurance companies where it's complicated, it doesn't work. But then, you go on holiday, and I said that before in the preparation, you go to, let's say, to Miami, you go to South Beach, and you just know, and that's maybe déformation professionnelle, you're there and thinks those houses are all at the wrong place. And we all know it's a high-risk place. And if you don't get insurance there, you maybe need to think if you are at the right location. So, but that's more, I think, a city element that we need to think of. When I think, what can we do as an industry, right? And to me, it's we're Swiss Re. We're one of the large reinsurers of the world. So our clients are the insurers. So we don't work. U.S. private can't be a client of ours, but insurers are. AXA, here you are now. AXA is an important partner of ours, for example. What can we do to help in the end? And one element, and it was mentioned before, is parametric insurance. Now, what is parametric insurance? Now, keep it very simple, right? It's a different model, a different instrument that we get. Because again, going as a private person, even being in the industry, I don't like to have to work with insurance and look at my policies and if you have a claim, I mean, let's be honest, all here. Probably we all had a damage and we didn't go to the insurance because it's too cumbersome, and then they want to have papers and they want to have calls and they want to come by and look at it. And you say, you know what, I'll just pay it myself. And an instrument that works there is parametric insurance. So it doesn't pay the damage that occurred, that you had, but it is linked to what is called a trigger. If something happens, the payment will be done automatically, no questions asked. So it's much simpler, it's much faster. And what does it need to be able to do such an insurance? I'll come to some examples to make it more specific right after. Well, it needs that trigger, and what is required for that trigger? It needs to be fictitious, and it needs to be a model. You have to be able to make a model on it. And let's keep it very simple, right? You can say there is an earthquake and there is a scale on it. If it's higher, if it goes higher than X, it's paid automatically. Or if we have water, right? You have rain, you have that amount, millimeters per square meter per hour, and it's paid automatically. So no discussions in the end because you have that. Now, what helps? We heard technology, right? We heard satellites. You need a good data source that both parties rely on and you can work with. So a very critical element that we have there. Now, sounds fancy with satellite and everything. It's nothing new. When I did some research, I think early 1800s in Hamburg, there was a fire insurance. And, you know, it was for landlords that if there is a fire and they don't get paid by the renters, they get a fixed amount. So as many things, it's been there for a long, long time, but there was a bit more movement, I think, with the latest development. And I think it's especially also in the topics we talk now, an incredibly important instrument that we have. And I want to do two, I'll give you even three, because listening before, we saw risk prevention, which to me, I think is a critical element, right? Insurers shouldn't come in when the damage is done. Insurers should help you to manage risks. And in the best case, it doesn't even happen. And I'll give you an example of parametric insurance at the Horn of Africa that we did a couple of years ago, where you had small farmers who had cattle. And the problem was that if it was too dry, they didn't have water and the cattle died. So a solution that we were able to create, and often those solutions are public-private partnerships that we do, there it was that with satellite pictures, with real-time satellite pictures, with the color, you see how dry it is. So the moment it got to a certain brown level, money was automatically distributed to the farmers that were able to buy water so the cattle doesn't die. So the insurance is not here to pay for the cattle that die, but make sure the cattle survives. So simple element, you know, technology, as we said, the trigger is the draw that we have, payment fast and quick. So the last element is a critical one. You need an infrastructure that works, because speed is always then, you know, the money needs to get to where it's needed fast. I'll give you a second example. This is one, we closed the eyes before and thought of a city. I lived a couple of years in New York, still love the city, and was thinking, well, how would it look in 2050, but that's another discussion. To me, it's more the solution we found with them. It's a peninsula. We're on an island now, but there it's on a peninsula, very exposed, as we all know. And flood, I experienced them myself when I was there, is a problem. And yes, insurability is high, but on low income, that's often where that second half is, where the insurability is, the insurance is missing. So with the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, with a broker, with multiple partners, we introduced, I was 2-3 years ago, a parametric insurance for flood. So what is happening? Once there is flood, and how is it detected? Again, that trigger, it's a mix between sensors, really physical sensors on the ground, satellite data, and social media. So, you know, social media in the end is good for something sometimes. We can, not just a waste of time, which is often is, but so we have those elements, and there it goes to low income households up to $15,000. It's through the collaboration with the local neighborhood organization, it will be distributed fast. And this is another example where parametric insurance helps. And the last one we just announced 2-3 weeks ago, again, partnership always multiple. I'm not saying we announce we as Swiss Re, but it's always working with brokers. In that case, it's with Generali locally. And it's another element where we protect cultural goods, right? So it's with the Italian church organization here. Imagine wanting to insure all the churches in Italy, and if you travel around, there are a lot of them, right? And this is the largest parametric deal that has ever been done, and that sounds now large is always big, but it also shows how much more potential we have on parametric insurance, because it's, I think, over 3 years, 180 million. big number, but in the whole context, still very small. And we see again in Europe, it's harder, it's more fragmented to get such solutions, but we're able to do it there again. We have again, it's against earthquake and flood. We have parameters, triggers agreed, and again, quick payment, that element that need to be done immediately can be done. So with that instrument, we can insure things that haven't been insured or was very hard to insure, and it gives speed, that it goes to the people in need. And we heard the problem that we had in LA as well, as fast as possible.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and fascinating examples there. Dario, if I could bring you in now on the question, how can we make the world more insurable?
Yeah. First of all, thank you again for the invitation in this very nice location. And today I'm bringing the perspective to this panel of like on an investment manager focused on listed impact investing strategies, and which is also the same perspective that I share also when representing the Borsa Italiana Sustainable network. We see like a huge potential in adaptation and resilience investments because of the like some of the points that I'm happy to go through together with you today. First point is that I think that we have tremendously underestimated physical risks so far. And for example, like a paper in June 2025 that was published in Nature clearly stated that any models that we use that assume climate sensitivity below 2.5 degrees is totally unrealistic and not compatible with satellite observations from 2001 to 2023. So which means that we are likely that we are heading towards a plus 4 degree scenario, even in a RCP 4.5, not necessarily in RCP 8.5, which means that the consequences of climate change and the impacts of climate change are going to happen much faster, much quicker, and the future that we were expecting for 2040 may already be here. And I think some of the statistics, particularly like some of the numbers that were published by Swiss Re Institute, by the way, on total insured losses and how they are evolving over the years, clearly indicate that we are heading towards a very adverse scenario. 2024 record year for insured losses at a close to 150 billion. And the overall economic losses were at like 340 billion, which means also that basically the overall impact that what you expect from climate change is already happening today. What's happening on the other side is that while the insured losses are on the rise, and the reinsurance capital as a percentage of GDP is decreasing. You pointed out very clearly as well. So which means that the increasing gap may be just like filled if we increase public spending, because like there are increasing number of families and companies that will be left without any insurance coverage. We can see some signals also when looking at the Nat Cat bond issuance, which hit a record high in 2024, which like Nat Cat bonds are a way for reinsurers to transfer risks to capital markets. And I think that like even taking a geographical perspective and looking at what is happening in the US and in Europe, I think that clearly paints a picture where we have to deal with the fact that the effects of climate change are already here and are not like far into the future. Looking at the Bloomberg Intelligence latest assessment of the climate spending, which like refers to the public money for natural catastrophes, for climate disasters, for power outages, and for increasing insurance premium has been assessed over the last 12 months at 1 trillion, which is like between April 2024 and April 2025, which means that it already accounts for close to 1% of the US GDP, which is the largest economy in the world. So what can we do to deal with this scenario? Which, by the way, it is like it's happening the same thing also in Europe. There are like increasing like larger areas where now cannot get insurance coverage anymore, and it is becoming more common among analysts to see like the retreat of the insurance coverage from larger areas as a potential source of financial instability, or possibly is also a financial crisis that could be similar to what happened in 2008 without having any tool, though, to address the underlying causes. Because like we need to face the fact that if insurance becomes unavailable in a certain area, abrupt repricing of real estate assets become an inevitable consequence. And if that happens, also access to any sort of capital becomes unavailable. So we should start asking ourselves the question also about what happens when the insurance coverage, what are the tipping points beyond which the real estate asset prices in a given region gets completely repriced and abruptly repriced. I think that is the direction we are heading. And in order to provide answers and solutions to the question on how to keep the world like insurable, I think that the only possible solution is to deploy at scale adaptation resilience investments. And if we think that they may generate returns over the medium long term, we should take a deeper look at an index, which is called the Prepare and Repair Bloomberg Index, which tracked 100 companies from 2015 to 2025. And this index is composed of 100 US-based companies that are exposed to heating, ventilation, air conditioning, reconstruction services, building material services, rental services, any products or services that could be framed within an adaptation resilience framework, whereby you have like solutions that can help you prevent, respond, and recover to the impacts of climate change. And if you look at the performance of this index, it is the only index that we have been able to find over the years, based on our research, that has outperformed the S&P 500, which is a notoriously difficult to outperform. It has a return, like the annualized return has been 17.5% over 10 years, as compared to 12.5% of S&P 500. Also McKinsey made like a very interesting estimates of the potential addressable markets for the key adaptation resilience solutions going forward. And these estimates are in the range of 1 trillion by 2030. And these are the solutions that I think that we need to deploy as fast as possible. And in order to do so, I think that we have like one lever, which is like price signals. And the price signals need to come from like two fronts. The first one is the insurance companies themselves, by allowing to have like discounts if you adopt specific adaptation resilience measures in advance. And the same kind of reasoning applies also to lending. So we need to go towards like a conditional lending approach, where I'm going to lend you money if you decide, if you implement specific adaptation and resilience measures. I think that this is the only way forward if we want to try to keep the world insurable and also to a certain extent livable. And by the way, like I read this morning like a news regarding UK that like the Climate Change Committee, which is like an advisory board to UK government, released today a statement saying that UK should be ready to face 2 plus 2 degrees in 2050, not in 2100. So it means that everything that we were expecting, like on a much larger scale, on a much longer scale, it's happening much faster than we expected, and need to get ready very fast. To the last point you mentioned, was very interesting, the mandatory Nat Cat scheme, that Italy was one of the first countries to adopt such a scheme to protect particularly small and medium enterprises against Nat Cat. The problem right now in Italy, speaking with a lot of like insurance companies, that there is like the obligation, but there are no products out there because insurance companies are not able to price these products efficiently, and we do not want to get risk. So also provocatively, the question that I would like to ask today is what happens when Swiss Re stops buying the risk from AXA? And what happens to the offering that we get in primary insurance markets? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I want to ask a quick question of Paulina and Martin, who both worked in government. Martin worked for the Mayor of London. Pauline, as we mentioned before, is taking up a role with the LA Council. In terms of what governments, local and national, should be doing to answer this question, could they be doing more in terms of planning, et cetera, et cetera? Could I just take a few comments from both of you on that, and then we'll go to the audience.
And that'll be super quick. I mean, California alone, we have our own insurance for both earthquakes and fires for areas that are deemed uninsurable. And I do agree with what you're saying. Just because there's a beautiful mountain view with the ocean does not mean that someone should live there. Just enjoy the greenery as it is, because certain areas I don't believe should be rebuilt because it will happen again. I mean, since the time of the missions in California, we've had forest fires. So this is not something just because of climate change. It's just California's had a history of fires since way back then. So in terms of that, but also we're, the County of Los Angeles and the City of Los Angeles do have disaster relief funds, but that's not enough. That's not enough when there's so many families that are still right now homeless that don't have a place to live because one, either they were underinsured, they didn't have insurance, or they're still dealing with the processes. And I think that you make a great point in having the parametric insurance. I think that would be very needed in California.
Martin?
Yeah, great. Everything I've heard is prevention is key. But the problem with prevention is you're asking people to pay for something that hasn't happened, which I don't know about you, but I don't, like paying for things if I'm not fairly sure that it's going to happen, and therefore, it's in my long-term interest. However, I mean, if you look at, I think it's the World Resource Institute, they say for every dollar you spend on adaptation, you get $10 back. Well, that's pretty good business case. They base this on 330 projects globally, where they could look at the investment, they could look at what it would save in the long run, and nobody disputed it. And then just one final example, but if you look at Shanghai, they've managed to raise $30 billion to completely upgrade the city, so Shanghai doesn't have to move somewhere else. So somebody somewhere has sat and done and calculated all the externalities to keep Shanghai where it is. This is the figure we need to spend today, clearly meaning the figure they would have had to spend over time had they not done this would have been far, far greater. So I just think, again, going back to, the city, they have long-term planning departments, they have adaptation plans, and they're using them, they're putting them in place, some better than others, some faster than others. But it's clear that if you have a governance structure in place for a big population, you can neutralize and make a benefit for society at large.
Thanks. Can we take some questions? Does anyone have a question? So we have a mic, so wait for the mic. If we could take this one, we'll take a few at the same time. Oh, well, you can be next. And then...
Okay, thank you. Thank you to all. That's very interesting. Basically, I think my question is a kind of clarificatory question about the parametric insurance that was center stage of many speeches, and also about the interaction between prevention of risk and parametric insurance. So very nice point. Sometimes I got the impression that depending on the threshold, where you fix the threshold, there may be bad incentives to prevention. Because one reasoning could be, okay, I should prevent my risks below the threshold, but beyond the threshold, I get paid. So I don't need to prevent. So I wondered whether you could say something more about how to fix the threshold, whether there will be different thresholds depending on the neighborhoods and zones, and the kind of reasoning that the insurance and the public at large could do in fixing a threshold in order to obtain good incentives instead of bad incentives.
Okay, could
Thank
you
you.
pass the mic a couple of rows forward and then we'll get yours as well.
Thank you so much. And thanks a lot for this panel. I've learned so much. It's really great to hear a lot of innovative approaches on dealing with climate risks and to see also where the insurance sector and also city of LA is standing. And I'm really impressed by what you're all mentioning as tools, etc. I just have maybe a bit of a provocative question, if I may.
We
So
like those.
you talk about prevention a lot. But you also mentioned the 4 degrees and 2.5 maybe by 2050 as kind of standing facts. But my question is, doesn't the insurance sector also have a responsibility to push back against that as a standing fact? And what are the things that you're doing to try to create a different future where maybe the risks are decreased? And also, I think for an insurance sector, the kind of scope of the problem is more manageable.
And we'll
Thank you.
just take one more question here from guy in the white shirt, and then we'll go back to the panel. So if you could choose your responses.
So good morning and thank you for the presentations. I was just curious to ask your comments and view on what we're seeing right now in the insurance sector regarding net zero commitments and alliances. So last year we have seen that the Net Zero Insurance Alliance was dismantled following the exodus of its main players. And also there were legal claims in the US regarding antitrust laws. And despite these makes the news, I think that this doesn't necessarily mean that the sector is not doing enough in this sense. And from my personal view, I think that it is also a way to say that one size does not fit all. So we cannot just commit to one single target for the entire sector, but rather we should focus in developing more specific actions. And that's also why we have now the Forum for the Insurance Transitions, which is more interested in setting the principles and the focus rather than a general broad commitment. So I was just curious to ask, what's your point on these kind of trends that we're seeing right now? Thank you.
Should we take these three and then we'll come to you for your final?
I can be super quick, but I'll address all three, but really quickly. The parametric one, and you may want to add to it, but we cover the Mesoamericana reef. And I want to use this example because I think it helps you understand the difference between prevention and acting in the moment, which is kind of the other big benefit of parametric insurance. But the reef, just to give you a sense of scale, supports 20,000 fishers that provide food for the local community. So protecting the reef is critical. When the parametric trigger is done after a big storm, the money's paid to clear the silt off the reef. And if you don't do it, the sea life doesn't return to the reef. And just a quick ocean fact, but 90% of ocean life lives on coral reefs. So the significance of acting in the moment is really key. Prevention, therefore, is difficult. How do you prevent after a storm this happening? You may want to add, but I'll leap quickly. I agree with you. I think our industry, and this is why Francesco beats us up and makes us come here every year. Our industry can do better. I mean, we as a company ensure the transition. We have an enormous role in that. We also work very closely with some of our bigger customers that are big emitters to for them to reduce their emissions. But I agree with you. I think the industry can still go further, and I don't know an industry that couldn't, if I'm honest. But I agree with you. And on the net zero alliances, pressure from US attorney generals caused the collapse of these. I'm pleased to say with the Net Zero Insurance Alliance, the methodology was set. We decided subsequently to set targets. We were the first insurer to do it. Those commitments remain in place. We will keep them regardless of the headwinds that we call coming from the US. And I think, again, as an industry, we are staying together, we're working together to ensure that those methodologies are improved and that the industry goes forward. The UNEP FI principles for sustainable insurance also, really key for thinking about the long-term future for society.
Anybody else want to come back on that? No? No? Francesca. Wait for the mic.
Very quickly, because we don't have time, in fact, but it's super interesting. And I was just wondering, this is both parametric insurance in the catastrophe bonds. How do they reflect different, number one, places? Because insuring Venice is completely different as opposed to insure Los Angeles. Number two, the work that the place is doing after being insured on adaptation, because after having taken the parametric insurance, the place may decide to do something to reduce the possible risk. And number three, also you talk very smartly about spending money immediately after. Another thing which may make a lot of difference, how the place, the people organize themselves in terms of very quickly reacting to the disaster so that the damage is how do you reflect this personalization?
Of course, I can make a comment on modeling, right? I mean, there are a couple of leading modeling companies. The large one like us, we have metrologists, we have people. We are very, very strong. Some say almost a university. So we build our own models. That all goes in. We have tools that our clients can buy, where you can go out to the house and per peril to see the risks that you have, and all those factors go in. And so we invest a huge amount to have models that reflect that and are price sensitive, right? That the more you do, the less you pay. Well, I think it's right. What we look at is not per client in the end, right? We look at the zone, right? And if something was done like here in Venice, this is reflected. If you do something on your own house, it's the insurer who then has a question, right? If you go down to that detail, it's like when you ask, do you have an alarm system for your house? Then it's cheaper. That's the questionnaire that the insurers do then in the end.
Did you want
But to your question also, there are indeed insurers that if you do act on prevention, using my example, if you change the roof, then they are going to lower the pricing. Not all of them, but some of them are doing that, yes.
Dario?
Yes, also to your point, I think that I referred before about, I talked a bit before about price signals, referring exactly to also to your point, Francesco, in the sense that it's up to the insurance sector to price risks effectively and efficiently. And so if, in particularly for insurance, even more so, because have a longer time frame. So if the insurance sector is to live up to the responsibility that it has from our perspective, it needs to fully integrate price signals into insurance products, and by doing so, incentivizing adaptations and resilience measures preemptively, because Martin is absolutely right. Nobody likes to pay for something that may happen in the future, but it's up to the insurance sector to define what's the likelihood of a certain event happening in the future and to price it accordingly. And if you decide as a policyholder to reduce that level of risk, you should be incentivized to do so. To your point about responsibility, I think that right now, we should not expect any kind of alignment from capital markets. We should not expect no alignment from the insurance sector either. It's just a matter of return on investments. And therefore, the answer so far, the primary answer to the increasing impacts from climate change from the insurance sector has been either to increase insurance premiums. And if we keep on going on that trajectory, insurance premiums will become unaffordable for entire areas, and that may trigger financial instability to a very and that could affect all of us. And the second point is to remove coverage from entire areas. So this has been the two answers so far. It cannot work this way if we want to keep the word insurable. And I think that we need to work out solutions where adaptation resilience investments are incentivized at scale, which is not the case so far because most of the funding, in spite of a 1 trillion opportunity by 2030, comes from multilateral development banks. Private money is still very little when we talk about adaptation resilience measures, and that for this reason, for example, we see a huge potential going in this direction.
I think we're out of time, but that leaves us with some big questions, but also some proposed solutions. So thank God for some positive news, right? Thank you very much to all the panel. Enjoy your lunch. So, very good. Yeah. Oh, we're doing a question? Oh, you want it?
Everyone, can you hear me? Okay.